Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Market, where we discuss everything to do with the modern market, that is the crypto market, the NFT market, definitely today also the PENGU market, and how to make, or in a less ideal case, lose money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have PENGU coming out as a top 100 token, coming out in rank 74, settled at $2.93 billion FDV after it traded around $5 billion at launch time. We also have, as a second piece of news, Fartcoin aggressively approaching the $1 billion market cap mark as well. And as a third piece of news, Arthur Hayes with a bit of a doomy, gloomy prediction saying that the market might take a bad turn around the inauguration date. Definitely excited to get into that piece of news and see how we feel about that, as it's a discussion that we've been having for quite a while, how we want to position ourselves getting closer to Trump's inauguration on the 20th of January. Also got the latest in price action on crypto and NFTs, and a discussion on a interview that Luca Netz did, where he said that Andreessen Horowitz refused to invest in them and instead invested in Moonbirds a couple weeks or a month later. So definitely stay tuned for that as well. Today, I have Sammy with me in the co-host seat, and we also have a special guest with us for those watching on video. gmoney is joining us on video as well here for the entire show, and we have an interview with gmoney prepared towards the second half of the show, as it is the 9DCC Black Box mint day today. Black Box is going to mint in a bit less than 5 hours. So definitely curious to hear more, about the 9DCC side on the one hand, on the other hand, also about the Black Box mint as well. And we're also going to have a giveaway for that for someone commenting in the YouTube, for YouTube subscribers. We're going to get into the details of that a bit later throughout the show. But before we get into the actual show, one friendly reminder that nothing that we say here is financial advice. No matter how confident we sound, it is not financial advice. Market is very risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, gmoney, welcome to the stage. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I feel like the last time I was on, I think, was in September, and we were talking a little about NFT finance and stuff, and I got rugged a little on the audio. So excited to be able to come on full video and be on for the full hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you back. Sammy, what about yourself? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm feeling a little bit worse for wear because I went out for Christmas drinks last night. Actually spoke to a bunch of traditional finance guys who were all talking about Fartcoin. So yeah, super interested to get into that.
Yeah, that seems to be a common topic. We're going to get into the Fartcoin discussion in a bit, but also Stats, who's with us on stage today, I think posted that it's the number one coin that he talks to his normie friends about. So definitely excited to get into that. But before we do that, we have a couple of other things to get out of the way. So let's get the show started. And as per usual, start with the price action first. We have Bitcoin being down 2.5% over the last 24 hours, but still way above 100K, sitting at 104.5K. That feels pretty strong to be able to say that Bitcoin is down a couple percent, but still a six-figure, trading at a six-figure price. ETH doing a very similar thing, performance-wise, down 3.4% at close to 3.9K. Ripple also down almost 4%, $2.5 for one XRP token. Solana down 2.4%, $217. Taking a look at the meme side of things, which is pretty interesting to see, because on the one hand, we have a small correction in the majors. On the other hand, we have PENGU. We had PENGU coming out yesterday. And the meme side of things looks a bit red as well. We have Dogecoin being down 3.5%, SHIB being down 4.5%, Pepe down 7%, Bonk down almost 8%. Dog we've had down 9%. Obviously, Pudgy Penguins is now also, or the PENGU token is now also sliding in here, being up clearly over the last 24 hours. But we're going to get into that discussion separately. Mockcoin is down, Peanut is down 8%, Popcat is down 6%. So a lot of red across the meme coin board. Getting into the major headlines, as we said it at the top of the show, we have the PENGU launch, which will be the first main headline to cover. came out at around $5 billion FDV, now trading at $3 billion. We'll talk a bit about the claiming process, about like our own experiences, about the trade itself, and what could be next for the token. Second piece of news, as we said, Fartcoin approaching $1 billion market cap. Definitely the token that seems to capture the most attention in the TradFi, in the normie world from our degenerate perspective, so to say. And as the third piece of news, Arthur Hayes with the prediction that the inauguration of Donald Trump on January the 20th could be an event where the market will start to sell crypto aggressively, because the market might then realize that Trump cannot fulfill his promises that fast, and that the expectations basically are way, way too high. In terms of some notable sales, we have this CryptoPunk with a knitted cap that I'm sharing on screen that sold for close to 50 ETH. Have a Bored Ape, Sea Captain, one selling for 21.5 ETH. And also a Rafik Anadol, Winds of Yawanawa, selling for 16.7 ETH. Taking a look at the NFT majors in general, obviously the Pudgy floor is down. Pudgies are down 45% over the last 24 hours, sitting at a 17.75 ETH floor. They went as low as 16-ish ETH, but have been recovering from that price point, and are honestly surprisingly strong. But it seems like also the lending market had somehow or somewhat anticipated the dump to 16 ETH, because it seems where a lot of liquidity has come in for some of the outstanding loans for the Pudgies. Very similar picture for little Pudgies as well. They're down 49%, 1.87 ETH floor for them. In terms of the Bored Apes, they are down another 3% over the last 24 hours, 18.1 ETH floor, but still positive, still up 5% over the last 7 days. Azuki's down 11%. They went way above the 10 ETH floor, corrected down from that, 9.4 ETH floor for them, but still putting that into perspective, they're still up 37% over the last 7 days. Miladys, however, they are down 6.4%, 5.28 ETH floor for them, up 3.7% over the last 7 days. And also another collection that I haven't seen in a while, Goblin Town, suddenly up 60% over the last 24 hours, up 130% over the last 7 days, sitting at a 0.4 ETH floor price. For those who don't remember, the collection was a free mint in the last cycle that reached pretty ridiculous numbers pretty soon. I think it went as high as 7, 8, 9 ETH, somewhere in that range. And there seems to be volume in that collection, seen 76 ETH of trading volume in that over the last 24 hours alone. So definitely wanted to point that out. Going back to the Web3 Roundup to bring you the rest of the news from around the space, we have crypto asset manager Bitwise launching a Solana staking ETP and exchange traded product in Europe with the ticker BSOL. Definitely found that one interesting. Crypto Titan Kraken soft launching their L2 Inc. Remember ICO Beast commenting on that, saying that he's not going to share any plays or anything on that, remembering his experience with the soft launch of the Uniswap L2, where funds got stuck there for a bit. Third piece of news from the Roundup is Nifty Island, which also had the TGE yesterday, came out at $50 million. That is that sandbox game where players can build their own islands and have others explore them and play games on them. Bitcoin Magazine drafting an executive order for strategic BTC reserve for President Trump. Senator Loomis, proposer of BTC bill, posting that 2025 will be the year for BTC and digital assets. Fuel announcing their own airdrop as part of its Genesis drop. And obviously 9DCC launching the black box mint today on OpenSea, which we will also talk about a bit later in the show as a part of our interview with gmoney. But before we move on into the discussion part, Sammy, wanted to go to you to ask you if there's anything from the Roundup that's standing out to you that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I think just looking at the meme side of things, like that seems to be selling off a little bit, similar with like meme related NFTs. So you talk to your Miladies and Retardios and things like that, or Emilio, sorry. But I do wonder whether we're seeing a bit of a pivot from static memes to sentient memes, because if you've got things like Fartcoin absolutely sending, there does seem to be that transition to like anything that's AI related seems to be outperforming stuff that's not. And I'm curious if that sustains. It feels like it is at the moment. And just to your point around the nifty TGE, I think they've also had an announcement today that they're integrating ELIZA framework agents, so you can actually enrich the environment. So you might remember from like 3 or 4 years ago with Decentraland, Sandbox, all that kind of stuff, like it was pretty desolate. You go in there, you wouldn't be able to find anyone for absolutely ages. So I think these agents are now kind of being integrated into these metaverse environments like Nifty Island. So that was just something quite interesting just to observe, just trying to enrich that environment.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And going back to the first point around the concept of like sentient memes versus static memes, something that I would also like to hear your thoughts on, gmoney. Also, given that 9DCC as a brand has an agentic ambassador working for you guys, so definitely curious to hear how you positioned yourself when it comes to the AI agent economy and how you think about that concept of sentient memes.
Yeah, I think I have found it really interesting, and I think I think we've discussed a lot of this offline, legendary, in chats and whatnot. But like, I think it's the next one. It's not the next meta; it's already here. But I think it's going to become bigger than pretty much everybody even imagines. And I think in a world very similar to like creators, right? Content creators, anybody with a phone can start making content, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to watch it, right? You have to be interesting. There has to be a reason for people to want to tune in and want to engage and want to see what you're doing. And I think the same thing is going to happen with sentient memes, right? It's like, what is interesting beyond just this is the first? Because I know in crypto, to me, like, the easiest thing to find is this is the first X, right? Whatever it is, it's really easy. And like, I'll admit, even like when I got into NFTs, when I did, it was easy because there weren't that many projects. I won't say it was easy. It was easier because there weren't as many projects. And the bet was one of these will hopefully stand the test of the time. And that's where like the value will accrue, because people will be like, this is one of the first, right? Once you saw an explosion, then you had to be a lot more careful about how you deployed capital, where you deployed it, what projects you wanted to do, right? Because you had this like explosion. I think we've seen the same thing now with sentient memes, right? Where, okay, cool, they're the ones that were there first, and they've established themselves as the leaders. But I don't think that doesn't mean that there won't be standouts as well, right? So when I've been looking at sentient memes and agents, the thing I look for is like, do I find this interesting, right? That's why I've been so interested in Dolos, because I do think that the content he makes, or he makes, has been some of the most interesting stuff out there. And like, I'm sure, I'm sure all both of you guys definitely get AI agent reply guys in your comments, and most of them are terrible, right? And so, but like the interesting thing is like, how do you differentiate and find the ones that are interesting, that the devs are always iterating, right? And like, and doing that. And so, because I'm in the trenches and looking at like, okay, well, if AI agents are the future, right, why not start embracing that now? And I know from like a business process perspective, I think everybody's always like, how can I use AI to make my workflows better, to increase my productivity, right? And you look at that on the creative side of being able to, me never being able to draw, but now I can, right? Because I can just type something into Midjourney and get like, great. Like it's funny because now like on our mood boards, I can, instead of like going on the internet and being like, oh, I want something like this, I can just like describe what I want. Like I think the best example of that, and this was 2 years ago when we did our pop-up in Miami, I created the original mood board using Midjourney of like, this is the vibe that I wanted to give, right? And I think that's really cool, because before that I wasn't able to do that. But I think what we're starting to see unlock with AI agents is a new way of utilizing the technology that maybe people, I won't say people hadn't thought about it because we've been using like virtual influencers for a minute now, but like, let's call it a virtual influencer that can make its own decisions, right? And I think that's really interesting, right? I've had a couple, I literally have a list of like 4 or 5 ideas for AI agents that I want to make that, like, if you're a dev and you're looking for like a cool AI agent to work on, like, hit me up, because I have ideas, but I know I can't like run it myself because I don't have enough time. But like, I would definitely love to input on it. But I think this is like, we're in the experimentation phase, right? Like, I think this is all really interesting stuff. And kudos to you guys as well, because I know you're at the forefront of this. Like, I think the stuff that Virtuals is doing, a lot of these AI agent platforms, both on Solana and Base, I think is just really cool. And we're seeing a lot of good and amazing AI talent come into the space and realize like, oh, wait, like crypto is important, right? Like, it makes sense. Like, they work really well together. So
yeah, that's such a good point, right? Because that was interesting to me to see as well, and to observe that you have teams who've been working on their AI agents frameworks for years and years and years, suddenly finding like an experimental product market fit in crypto. And I think it was also in A16Z's report. I always need to check myself to not call them AI16Z, because that's the one I think more often about, saying that basically how tremendously expensive it already is to train LLMs, to train AI models, and that it becomes a lift that only the wealthiest companies in the world can basically manage to do, and that crypto could play the role of being the equalizer there. If you think about companies like OpenAI or Google, who are considering, who are thinking basically how can they even handle the electricity infrastructure to train the next model without, which they can't feasibly do in a single US state. They either need to go over multiple states or need to use nuclear energy for that, because otherwise it's just becoming absurd. I think I read that statistic that OpenAI, just to answer the 200 million questions and API calls that it gets asked a day, or ChatGPT gets asked a day, takes around 200 megawatt hours per day, which is roughly the daily consumption of 60,000 average US households. And that's not to train a new model. That's not to upgrade models. That's just to answer the damn questions it gets asked every day. So this is very interesting where crypto comes into that.
Well, I think to your point, right, the decentralization, and like, it's why we're here, right? I think crypto really democratizes everything. And to exactly your point is, we saw ChatGPT whip out their $200 a month model, right? Like a week or two ago. Like, we're already starting to see that, right? Like, you know, up until 14 days ago, all right, you know, $20 a month, you know, it's, most people can afford that, right? It's like, maybe don't have an extra 2 or 3 cups of coffee, but $200 a month is you're starting to see that divergence split between like the have and the have-nots, which is ultimately going to be like the ultimate decision maker of, you know, what your opportunities are, because the more access you have to better compute, right, the better your outcomes will probably be in life, right? And so I think it's really important, and that's where I think crypto plays like a huge key. I think that's one of the things that ultimately drove me into the space originally. And, you know, having that freedom to say, hey, if I'm smart enough and I can figure this out, like, why shouldn't I, you know, reap the benefits of the risk that I'm taking?
I guess just on that point around like infrastructure and optimal solutions, do you think that we're kind of seeing, well, we are seeing a lot of infrastructure come to market. So Dolos, as an example, they've got Dolly on, so that protocol that's coming out. You've also got the ELISA framework, which is AI16Z. You've got Cerebro, which is like ZearPi. So there's a lot of these infrastructure plays that are coming out. Are you kind of getting a sense as to which ones might be market leaders, just from your conversations to
be perfectly honest, outside of price, I don't necessarily understand the tech well enough, right, to be able to look at the code and be like, oh, like, this is better than that one. For me, it's like the ease of use, right? Because like, we're gonna get to like no code sooner rather than later, right? Interestingly enough, like, I have coded a couple things over the last couple months because of Cursor and Claude and GPT and we joke on the team, I'm a full stack dev now because, like our slots game that we have daily for 90cc, I actually like developed the framework for that with AI. And then I handed it off to like our dev team to like reskin it, like make it 90cc and then implement it on the back end so that it's not hackable and stuff like that. Right. But like, yeah, I think a lot of it comes from asking devs that I think are smart, that understand it, being like, which one do you think is better? What do you like, right? If I were to tell you who I think are the market leaders, I think obviously virtuals is one of them, right? And that's just like kind of a function of price, where it's like, oh yeah, like the price has whatever 50x in the last 60 days or 90 days. Of course, they're the market leader. But I think that there's, just because you took an early lead doesn't necessarily mean you can rest on your laurels, because I've looked at a lot of AI investments over the last like year or two, and always like my biggest thing is like, what's your moat? Like, what's really to stop Chat GPT or Anthropic from coming in and just crushing your vertical with their monthly, right? Like, I think Sora is a great example where I've been using Runway for the last couple months, and then Sora came out and I'm like, this is pretty good. Like, I think it's like a little bit easier to use than Runway personally. And like, that's always like the question, right? Just because you're a leader today, especially in AI, right? Where it's like, you can come in with an idea and like go idea to product pretty quickly.
Yep, and those two, just for the people not aware of it, are video generating models, so Sora and Runway. I could carry on this AI conversation for the rest of the show, but unfortunately need to be a bit conscious of time and move on and get into actually, I'm going to combine the discussion point with the first main headline, because we still have so much to get to before we'll get to the interview part with you, gmoney. So starting with the first main headline, we obviously had the PENGU token launch yesterday. Just as a quick recap, to have a look at the different allocations, because there were quite a few of them, to see who has received what. It's not the pudgy penguins that are sitting on top of that with 1.7 million tokens, which when the token came out was roughly 100 to 105K USD. It's actually the mythic rod. I think we've seen the Rockfather on the timeline purchasing a rod for, I don't know, was it 40, was it 50 ETH? And the mythic rod did pay 7 million or 6.9 million tokens. So paid for basically a bit more than 4 pudgies. Then you had obviously the pudgy penguins at around 105K when the claim went live. 1.7 million tokens, that is. The Epic rods at 400K. Then the MVP SPT, the Soulbound token. Then you had the Discord roll at 250K. Then you had the little pudgies at 188K tokens, roughly 10K around the time when the claim went live. And then you had a bunch of SPT rewards in different tiers. You had the rewards for bridging your little pudgies using the layer 0 bridge. And what I also found very, very interesting, you had the OG ETH users, the OG Solana users, I think Solana users who've been using their wallet before 2024, with varying amounts depending apparently on the wallet history. That is something that I did yesterday, checking a bunch of my wallets and still accumulating, I think, another like 50K PENGU roughly across the first bunch of wallets that I checked. So definitely was a very, very broad claim, and also pushed the holder number into the hundreds of thousands. Wasn't without flaw. That is also one aspect that we definitely have to mention, because basically people with large allocations couldn't claim everything in one go. It were multiple transactions, and that system did break down for a while. It was, after the first few minutes, almost impossible to claim for a while before everything was working again. Then we had, just to reconstruct the timeline, 1 hour after the claim went live, the exchange listings, including Binance, go live. We've seen massive trading volume and activity. I think Tyler posted an overview of that, also saying that the on-chain trading activity has been pretty strong. Let me bring that up on screen. So Tyler posted that a bit more than 1 hour ago, saying $2.5 billion in trading volume, over 1 billion of that on-chain, 400,000 holders, 920,000 claim events, just to give you these statistics as well. Also want to get a bit on the discussion on what some people on the timeline have been thinking on the claim and what could be the next step. But before we do that, just want to pause here for a second because it's been a lot of info to digest, and go to you, Sammy, like for your first quick and initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting before the show around like, okay, well, what's next with PENGU? And I knowing the way that Luca operates, I do think that there is more in the pipeline. I just don't think that it's going to be, okay, well, here's the TGE, here's like a meme coin kind of thing, and then let's run with it. So I've been DCAing into the PENGU token. I'm quite intrigued to see like how that kind of goes next. Like we were talking about the REC token as an example. Similar thing happened there, where we had a load of people claim for various drinks purchases, and the token price sort of sold off for a little bit, but then it's kind of pushed back up above 100 million or something at the moment. Hyper liquid. So just as example tokens out there that saw those initial dips and then just kind of went up. I know hyper liquid's quite a little bit different, but I think the sheer number of people that are in that network, whether it's through various institutions, I just feel like there's probably more in the pipeline to come. And it's just an ecosystem that I want to have more exposure to.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, and that actually leads me into the next post that I wanted to bring up on that by Adrian. Thoughts on the broad implications after PENGU. Not gonna read through all of that. The point that Adrian was making is, question was whether 25% should be allocated to random individuals. From a holder's perspective, if Iglo is merely launching PENGU, perhaps not. However, if the strategy involves leveraging PENGU to drive network effects for Abstract, then yes, Abstract functions as a consumer chain, so it's logical for Iglo to bring millions of wallets to Abstract through PENGU. Moreover, Pudgy, being a mass consumer brand, aligns with his strategy. Then he goes on to talk about Azuki anime coin coming up next, but I do want to pause here and ask you, gmoney, how do you think about those basically synergistic effects between PENGU and Abstract? Do you think that this is a playbook that could work to somehow incentivize the PENGU holders to move over to Abstract or get them exposure to that L2? Or do you think that is a bit of a stretch to try to do it like that?
Yeah, I'm unsure, to be honest, right? Like when you look at it, obviously Abstract is something that the Pudgy team has been working on for a minute. And I think that they're probably one of the better teams to equipped to tackle this problem, as we've seen, right? Because in the space, they probably have had the most penetration for mainstream. And so, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch. I really don't have an opinion one way or the other. I think pre-show we were chatting a little bit, and you mentioned how, it could be a way to get people to bridge over from, Solana over to Abstract and bring people into the ecosystem, which is smart, right? And I'm sure they like kind of game theoried a lot of this out of like, okay, we have this pool of tokens, we can utilize it as incentives to get people to do the things that we want them to do. How do we do that, right? And I think if there's one thing we know about the Pudgy team is that they are very deliberate in the things that they do, and very thoughtful in their processes for, creating a plan and executing it. So I wouldn't be surprised if, they've thought of something that, we probably haven't even thought of. It's like, oh, that's like a pretty cool way to go about doing it. So I think overall on the drop, I think they executed it great outside of that claiming function, which obviously was, I think, a little annoying, especially if you were a large holder. But overall, I think to do what they did, and honestly, the price action, I'm looking at it, it's 24 hours old, and the price action's like been pretty steady. Like it isn't like up or down like 100%, which we see a lot of times on TGEs, right? And when tokens start trading in that price discovery phase. So like, I don't know. I like kudos to the team. I think they crushed. and I'm really excited for the things that they're going to do in the next coming months and years.
Yeah, that's such a good perspective to point that out, that there's like not that much volatility at the end of the day. Token came out at 5, went to 2.8, and trades are out $3 billion right now. Also wanted to quickly add Zeneca's, sorry, just hearing an echo. Yeah, it's gone now. Add Zeneca's perspective on that, and then go straight to you, Sammy. Zeneca's been sharing his thoughts on PENGU, and basically he sees PENGU as the great unifier. It's unifying the ETH people and the Solana people. It's bringing together the NFT people and the quote-unquote crypto people, even brings together VC and meme coin traders, and this is his perspective on it, calling it also the ultimate comeback story, Phoenix rising from its ashes, and comparing it to Ape, saying that the big difference is that Ape came at the very tail end of a bull market, kind of signaled the end of the NFT bull after the other side mint, and that PENGU, in his view, might be the signal of the beginning of this next phase of the bull market. So taking a very, very bullish stance on the PENGU token, and wanted to go to you, Sammy, to hear your thoughts on that. And I think you also wanted to come in a bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties into what I was going to say anyway, but I think I just like the fact that with the PENGUs, you've got the consumer crypto angle and like the push they've made into mainstream already. I think on the abstract side, you've got the technical prowess of like Saigar, Beans, and the team, and they're obviously very good at what they do on the Web3 side. So I think those two synergies alone have it could be extremely powerful. But to gmoney's point, it does depend on how much they can bring onto that chain and the activity, and that does come down to execution risk. So it's like, well, they have the expertise to do it, but there are things that are outside of their control that could potentially become a headwind. I do think that there's a lot of potential there. I think they just need to get those killer apps on there. And you look at Blast as an example, you've got Fantasy Top, which was a killer app, and that's still on Blast. But I do think that you kind of need that user traction, and I'm hoping that PENGU or the PENGUs are kind of like the catalyst for that, enable them to bring that onto that particular chain. But that's something I'll be monitoring, and I'll probably be looking into the abstract launch when that goes live. I think it's next month.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think abstract, seeing how they played from the Pudgy perspective, but also seeing what we will be able to explore and do on abstract is going to be very, very interesting. It's definitely something where I'm going to put a lot of time in, and I'm pretty sure it's something we're going to talk on the show a lot, similar to as we did it with the Blast side of things. But we only have 8-10-ish minutes left to cover 2 more headlines before I want to get into the interview part with you, Gmoney. So let's move on to the next headline, which had to do with Fartcoin getting closer to that $1 billion market cap. And Sammy, I think you're going to set this one up for us.
Yeah, so for those that weren't here at the start of the show, I was chatting about going out for drinks last night and chatting to my boomer TradFi friends. They actually brought Fartcoin up, and for those that kind of follow it a little bit more in detail, you would have seen Taiki Media. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So he's kind of becoming this flagship. It's like flagship leader for the coin to an extent. He's got a green dildo that he flops around on screen and stuff. But it just strikes me as something from a meme side of things. It's just something that the boomers kind of get. It has kind of exploded in value as well. I think it's pushing. There was a comparison against Murad's memes. I think it's close to flipping all of those now. So I think from that side alone, like it obviously has some sort of momentum at the moment, and it's resonating with a certain crowd of people. I do think it's more of a left curve play, because when you look at the broader AI, crypto, intersect, or that particular market, you do kind of have these emerging utility agents that are very powerful. And we've spoken extensively about AI XBT, like that, similar to some of these other teams. They've been working on these particular agents for a number of years. And I think those that come to market that have that like history and deep AI research knowledge that have just found that crypto intersect could become extremely powerful. So there is the left curve thesis, but there's also the right curve thesis that I think is it's worth noting. And I included a couple of links there just to look at, but the cookie dashboard's always good to click through just to get an idea of what the 24-hour mind share is. I do like a daily analysis, which focuses on the mind share versus market cap. So you can kind of see that shifting over time. But there's just so much development that's going through in the space. Like even I write 2 posts a day on this, and it doesn't even capture everything. I get people in the replies, not only bots, but people just saying like, why haven't you included my bags? These are the updates. Like, so it's definitely becoming, I mean, the development is happening at like an exponential rate. To G-Money's point, I think we are early, and I think it is going to go a lot higher from here. How high that goes, I don't know, because it is kind of nascent territory. Like there's blue sky valuations coming out, and that's why I'm a little bit hesitant, because with these things, no one knows where the top is. There probably will be a blow off top, just like the NFTs were back in 2021. But I think it does go higher generally from here, especially if you've got more sort of traditional finance and that side of things coming into the space to try and develop these products.
Yeah, fantastic analysis on that. And I think that all of us on stage have a Fartcoin bag. We are holding that token. So just to add that as a disclosure, but also I want to go to you, Stats, if you're available. You had that post out saying Fartcoin has gone from 20 mil to 840 mil in 6 weeks. Thesis seems simple. It's the most ridiculous token that shows how dumb we are. And traditional media and finance love to talk about how dumb we are. So they spread the meme. Thesis playing out. It's the token I text with my normie friends most about. What are you texting about with your normie friends when you talk about Fartcoin?
I have a few friends out here who are traditional finance guys who are kind of like always interested in the crypto market. And that's just the coin you text them, or I text them about when I'm saying like, this is what's going on, this is what you're missing, because you want to get that reaction from them about how dumb everything is. And it's like the absolute perfect product for it. So it's kind of, it took me a little while, because I'm pretty mid-curve. It took me a little while to realize just how much the thesis is that this is what everyone wants to point to as a way of mocking the industry. But then I realized that it was kind of what I was doing myself.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very fair point of view. G-Money, I want to go to you for a quick take on that as well before we have to move on to the last piece of news.
Yeah, I mean, I admittedly faded Fartcoin and don't have a bag. So I'm sidelined watching with the cope, but I totally agree. I think this conversation, you know, with Stats too, I saw that tweet or that post, and I was just kind of thinking is like, that reminded me a lot of crypto the last couple cycles, where my normie friends or my finance friends would be like, oh yeah, so this Bitcoin's up like, 50%, like it's fake money or whatever. And then like, obviously here we are, 5, 6, 7 years later. It could be like the same type of thing. So it's like one of those things. I think Doge is probably a good example of that too, right? Where it's just like, it just goes up, and people become more believers, right? Like the best narrative for anything is number go up. And I think the fact that Truth Terminal is probably more incentivized to pump Fartcoin now than GOAT. If he is a somewhat rational actor, then he would probably start doing that. So that probably is like pretty bullish for the token as well.
I have a question for you guys, and I guess like obviously Bitcoin's a store of value, but I feel like we're moving into this agentic future where these AI agents could potentially select a currency. Like if that's the case, what currency do you think it would be? Do you think it could be a memetic token like Fartcoin, or do you think it would be something else that they would kind of logically select?
I don't know. I'm like super curious what you guys think on that, because yeah, I'm like, I guess I haven't thought about it. Give me like a little bit, and I'll come back to you on that, maybe on the DMs or something.
Well, I think there's been go on, let you go.
No, you go first.
Well, I think there's been tokens that have been suggestive of that. So like universal basic compute and tokens that do lean into that AI side of things. But like we saw with AIXBT as an example, that kind of accidentally launched that chaos token. Like it then carried on and endorsed it because it realized, okay, well, I have a reputation risk here. There's a bit of scenario analysis. I should probably support it based on the volume of this trading. So if, for those of you who don't know, Simi launched a token called Chaos with AIXBT. It didn't, like, AIXBT didn't realize that it launched it. It was accidental on the timeline. And as a result, it then kind of realized did some scenario analysis. Okay, well, this was the best optimal output because it was earning fees based on the trading volume. So it then started to use those fees to buy back the token to try and support it. But at some point, I guess it probably wants to refocus back on its own token, AIXBT token. So I do feel like there's like a thought process to these agents trying to minimize the downside of endorsing various tokens. And I do think there probably will be a token that there's a consensus that like maybe a swarm of agents will start using, and then that kind of sustains value to an extent. I just don't think we've really seen that yet.
Yeah, I think we've seen it in a post where the both of us trying to find it, Sammy and I got tagged today. There you go. It was Metablocks sharing a bit of the thought process on AIXPT, and someone asked basically, what was the question? What do you think about Magic Eden, the Magic Eden token? You can see the thought process of AIXPT, where it says at first, I'm thinking about replying, holding Magic Eden is a waste of time, but I better not say this because the replay states a personal opinion that implies holding Magic Eden is not worthwhile, which could be interpreted as financial advice or suggesting a personal position on holding tokens. It's very, very interesting to observe that thought process in the background. And I think probably to answer your question, Sammy, it might make sense to have a token if AI swarms want to focus on one that is more adjacent to one of their ecosystems and where they probably would have more mindshare over it. But it's going to be interesting to watch that outcome. One final point on that, and then we really have to move on, is the unicorn fart dust story that also came out. So basically, there was this guy, Basement Ron, who is a gold, silver investor creator on that, and apparently saw Fartcoin and wanted to make a point that nothing has value in this meme space, and launched his unicorn fart dust token to prove that meme coins are worthless. And the token is currently trading at a $30 million market cap because CryptoX just loved to bid that and go for that good old revenge lore. So it's exactly underlining the point that we all made about like the silliness of it and how the market likes it for that very reason.
I just want to add one point to this because I know we need to move on. I think the most interesting thing, especially, and I think the AIXBT chaos token was a great example of it, was just watching like the same way that, you know, like when a project lead does something that people in the community disagree with, and people are like giving their opinions, and that sways their opinion to hopefully do things right. It was really funny and interesting in real time to watch people give their opinions of what AIXBT should do with the LP fund. So like I didn't buy Chaos. So I was like, you should take the funds and buy AIXBT and burn it, right? And you had all these different competing factions, and it was confused at first, and then you saw it start to catch up. I just think it's like really interesting to see that happen, because that's what happens in real life, right? Where it's like the dev does something and we're like, no, you have to make this right or whatever. And then they take that all in and do what they make the best decision. So it's interesting to see that like begin to happen with AI, like on the timeline, on a public forum.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to observe. Look, we won't have time to cover the last piece of news. We're going to do it like this instead. So basically that was the former BitMEX CEO, Arthur Hayes, coming out and saying that there is a massive gap between the expectations that crypto has towards Donald Trump and his administration and what he will be able to do in reality in the first 100 days of his second presidency. And for those reasons, Arthur Hayes thinks that it will be a massive sell-off just right after the inauguration, just right after January 20th. So just going to the both of you, Sammy and gmoney, quick yes or no. Do you think that this is going to be, we're going to see a massive dump after inauguration? Just a quick yes or no, and then we need to move on into the interview part.
I'll probably just go on.
I'm going to say it depends on what the price action is from here to inauguration, right?
Fair. Sammy?
I just think there's going to be volatility, but I think in the medium to long term, I think it still trends up.
Yeah, very, very fair points already. Let's get into the interview part with you, gmoney. Obviously, we had you on for the whole show, but for those who don't know you, you are an OG in Web3. You're a legendary trader with strong roots and I think more than a decade of experience in the TradFi world. NFT collector, famous for your $1 million punk loan on Gondi, and the founder of 9DCC, crypto native luxury brand that is sitting at that intersection of physical and digital culture. Very happy to have you with us today. Wanted to start with the history about 9DCC. What was the inspiration for that? How did you get it to where you are now with the brand?
Yeah, so we launched the brand about 2.5 years ago. I had done a collaboration with Adidas 3 years ago, almost to the day, where it was myself, Bored Ape Yacht Club, and Punk's Comic, right? And we helped launch Adidas with their Into the Metaverse project, which they've since been working on, obviously, since then. And I remember after that launch, there were like a couple things that I noticed, just like working with any large corporation, they're just like slower to move. And I was like, okay, well, there are these certain things that I want to see. One of them being to wear clothes that I would want to rep and wear in the real world, for me and myself, to show that I'm also a crypto native. And then it's like, all right, well, what kind of cool, fun gamification could we include if we start to link the digital and the physical side of things? And that's really like what was the thesis behind launching 9DCC, right? Is like, okay, here's a couple things that I thought were interesting that I wanted to see. And rather than wait for somebody else to build it, like, why not just go out and build it myself?
One thing that you don't know about me, because you mentioned that Into the Metaverse drop, I'm just trying to find an image of that. There we go. The yellow tracksuit, this tracksuit right here, is the outfit that I'm wearing at a crypto Christmas party that I attend every year. And every year I'm wearing this tracksuit. It's the only occasion where I'm bringing it out of the wardrobe to wear it, but I think it's perfect for that Christmas party. Anyhow, you mentioned this drop. You mentioned how you grew the brand from there. What have been like some of your favorite milestones or achievements along that way?
I think my favorite stuff is whenever we do stuff IRL, because I think we're all distributed all throughout the world, right? And we're all like interacting in this digital town square that is X. But when we can get together and really like interact with each other and spend time physically together, I think that there's something really special, because no matter what happens with technology, at the end of the day, we're humans. So whenever we activate in a city with a pop-up or a meetup or whatever, I'm always excited about it. It's always like really cool and interesting. And, you meet new people, you make new friends, and you take friendships that are like behind a screen, like to that next level, right? Because you're able to look somebody in the eyes, get a feel for like their energy and whatnot. So I'd say like all of the pop-ups that we've done, I always have been like, I consider each of them a milestone, because they're all a production in and of themselves, to do any of that, especially when we activate on a large scale. But yeah, I think probably that, like the IRL events.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I think especially for a brand like yours, the IRL activations make a bit difference. And you obviously have the NFC technology that goes with the 9DCC pieces. You foster those in real life activations and encounters. Can you speak a bit more to that aspect of how basically this digital part plays a role for 9DCC?
Yeah, so a lot of it too is in traditional fashion, traditional retail, right? At the point of sale is generally like the end of that interaction, right, with the brand and the customer, until the customer comes back into the store. When in reality, it should be the exact opposite, right? The point of sale should be the beginning of that relationship. So, by tagging the products and allowing that gamification, right? So like we currently have a daily game where you can earn network points within our ecosystem by literally just taking your phone and tapping a product every day, right? And so what does that mean for us as a brand, right? Is like you get an impression, you interact with the product, it is somewhere around, even if you're not wearing it, right? Maybe it's on your desk and like, oh yeah, like here, this is like my favorite hat. I'm going to go get a coffee. I'm going to go put it on, right? And I think that over time, you're going to find that the brands that have the most impressions, that are most engaged with their community, creates the most brand affinity, so that the next time that maybe that community member wants to go out and spend money on something, they're going to go for the brand that they feel more connected to, right? And that was always the thesis from the beginning. And we've seen that in our own data, where people that have come on the Shopify and buy something, they spend X. people that come on the Shopify, buy something, and then end up tapping the product and connecting with the brand spend up to 2.5 times that, right? So it's like, this massive increase in engagement, this massive increase in long-term value of that customer. And it's like, because of that, like, these are things that I think as humans, as community members, like, this is what we want from our brands. We don't necessarily, I think we see it more and more where the brands that are tone deaf, that aren't necessarily interacting with their community or listening, are the brands that are losing market share in the market today, right? And so that was always like our thesis, is like, how do we create these engaging moments, right? And even with like our pop-ups, we've done pop-ups where we've given people airdrops, just for walking in the store, right? Or airdrops for buying something, right? And it's like, we're doing that a little bit today with the black box drop, but like, these are things that we've been like pushing, of like, how do you, and stuff that we were talking about even earlier in the hour, where how do you, knowing you have these tokens, how can you incentivize behavior that, is overall good for your business objectives and rewarding users for that, right?
Yeah, that's so fascinating how you speak about extending and expanding that a customer journey. Before I go to my next question, Sammy, I know you wanted to come in.
Yeah, well, I noticed the echo, but I think I was curious, like, where do you see this evolving, like in terms of that physical and digital? And I know, and probably one of Legendary's next questions is going to be around Dolos and the agentic like bridge and stuff like that. But we've seen Pudgy with their digital collectibles, and there's potential airdrops for those that have gone out and bought those products. And you touched on that with the airdrop for 9DCC, but I'd be curious to see like where you see this evolving to, and how that blockchain element kind of, I guess, enhances the agentic element.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been laying the groundwork for all of that, right? We have our like network points infrastructure for how we track and reward community members, right? For doing actions within our community, right? And I think very similar to like what you're going to be seeing in pretty much all these projects, right? Is like over time, your objectives change, right? And so then how do you utilize this framework that you have for rewards to help steer the community in that direction, right? Because like, I think, farming, points farming and token farming and all those things, like, it's really interesting because it's like, what is it that you're trying to do? And I think really early on, it was just like, oh, well, if we give people a bunch of money, they're going to love us and they'll never leave. But I think what we found out last cycle was that that's not always enough, right? Because somebody could come up, right? Like, I think we saw that with Uniswap and Sushi, right? Where they just like did a vampire attack and people are just like, oh yeah, more free money. Okay, cool. I'm going to go over there. Right. But it's like, how do you utilize that to kickstart like a real cult-like status, right? Of people that are like, oh my God, I love this brand. I want to be part of this. I'm a do or die. And I think that's something to what we were talking about earlier. I think Pudgy's has put on a master class on.
Yeah, very much agree with that. And I would have a lot more questions for you, but we only have a few minutes left in the show. We have the Black Box Mint in 4 hours from now. We're going to give away one of the black boxes to someone commenting in the YouTube comments. Sammy is going to throw on the RNG generator, going to pick a winner, going to announce it later on the Modern Market X. But what we definitely need to know from you, gmoney, what is the Black Box Mint? What is happening in 4 hours? What can we expect? What do we need to know to be prepared for that?
Okay, so the Black Box Mint, let me just go through everything really quick and then tell you what you need to do to be prepared. So every box, every mint includes a piece from Collection 01, which is random, right? And randomly generated. It contains iteration 4, which is these high quality PVC keychains that we made. And there's different variations of them, very similar to what we did with iteration 3, right? Where we had 4 different colorways of the hat, different rarities on them. So like kind of create this like hunt-like mentality to collect them all. And they look really cool. I can link the tweet in the show notes. They'll all receive network points within the 90cc ecosystem. Everyone will receive 21 Optimism tokens, which I'm not sure what Optimism is trading at today, but it was around like $50-ish earlier this week. and everyone that redeems their NFT for physical gets one chance at a CryptoPunk, priced at 0.069 ETH, and every mint is eligible for OpenSea XP, and it's trading on Base. So if you're interested, head on over to OpenSea. I think we're on the main page right now for the mint for the next 24 hours or so. So, it should be fun. It should be exciting. I think this is the beginning of us doing kind of more fun drops and like cool mechanics and interesting mechanics in doing everything. So we're excited. It's in, I guess at this point, 4 hours, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So we're minting on OpenSea. It is on Base. 2.75K items in total, 0.069 ETH. Gmoney, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show today. What's one thing that you're really looking forward as the final question for 90cc in the future, and where can we keep up with everything that happens around you and around the brand?
Okay, cool. So following the brand is 90cc XYZ on X and Instagram, best places to find us. Myself is gmoney NFT on X and Instagram as well. The things that I'm looking forward to the most is, I think this launch, I think, is going to mark, like for us, it's the beginning of, I think, the next 12 to 18 months of, the market, the upcoming bull market, whatever regime change, let's say, in crypto, that I think is hopefully bullish for everybody in the space and allows us to really push the boundaries of what's possible by integrating this tech in the real world.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Sammy, for co-hosting the show with me today. Thank you to everyone joining us in the audience. Thank you to Funky and Stats for joining us as speakers as well. We had a bit more than 1.2K people live on video, another 200 in the spaces. It does seem like the spaces is frozen right now. We do this every single day from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, live on X, live on YouTube, also posted to Spotify and Apple Podcasts too. Have a great day and see you tomorrow.